So today we'll be doing the unthinkable by daring to undertake our signwriting project with the aid of some masking tape. So please watch on to see how even a holier-than-thou purist signwriter such as JohnBoy may sometimes take the easier road. Greetings brushketeers, and welcome to another traditional signwriting lesson with JohnBoy. As with most of our projects and commissions, the front of this truck is commenced by marking out the top and bottom of the general lettering level. First, strike a line parallel to the top of the panel. But rather than attempting to get the lettering to work around the central badge, and rather than crushing it into the space above it, the text will have a bottom arc, allowing full usage of the available panel area. Establish the highest point of the arc at the center. Then establish the lowest point at extreme left. Now mirror this lower point to extreme right by measuring the distance down from the previously struck line, as well as the distance in from the edge of the panel. And after a slight adjustment, we are ready to utilize our first piece of masking tape. Starting at the first lower mark, and with the masking tape pointing upwards to an imaginary point above the center of the bottom lettering level, run the tape smoothly and with light tension towards this central mark. Keep your eye on the upper edge of the tape whilst simultaneously bending it downwards until you arrive at the center. With the tape now being parallel to the top, it is continued in a smooth downwards curve until the second lower point is reached, where it can be split from the roll. Run a Signwriter pencil very lightly along the upper edge of the tape arc, then remove and discard the tape. We now have our lettering levels and can proceed with chalking out the letter positions. Starting from the approximate center of the text, work outwards, writing lightly towards the right. Measure in from the edge to where the last letter ends. Duplicate this measurement to the far left of the panel. Begin writing from the start of the text towards the center. Check and refine as required. When you can't find the end of the tape, an easy solution is to simply rotate the roll sideways through 180 degrees. This will allow the leading edge of the tape to point downwards, thus casting a slight shadow and making it a lot easier to see. Once you have found the end, pull out a short length and fold it back on itself, sticky side in. This will form a small tab allowing for easy removal. Stretch out a generous length of tape, keeping it attached to the roll. Apply the tape only to the areas needed by keeping it taut and following the pre-drawn arc. Take care to only rub the tape lightly at first to prevent twisting. It can be rubbed progressively harder after it has been positioned. Snap it off with the aid of a fingernail or a carefully placed scalpel blade. This next step is extremely important. Masking tape and chalk do not mix, so the struck chalk line must always be removed from the surface before the tape is applied. This will prevent any paint seepage under the tape. Firmly attach the tape just ahead of the letter position. Gently stretch it along the length of the chalk line, keeping it slightly away from the surface. Run a finger along the actual chalk line, removing it in the process, and lower the tape onto the surface. Be sure to leave enough chalk to align the tape correctly. Choose a suitable brush. In this case, a pure red sable chisel edge lettering brush set in a swan feather quill, the equivalent to a number 10 lettering pencil. Ready it for use by removing any excess white spirit from the bristles by dabbing and squeezing the heel with a lint-free cloth. Follow this by rolling the shaft briskly to and fro between the palms, allowing the centrifugal force to dispel any remaining thinners. After a quick reshape, we can now begin lettering. As always, do not expect everything to work in perfect harmony on the very first stroke. It is already apparent that this red paint is slightly too thick and must be further reduced with a suitable thinner. However, another important, no-brainer rule of signwriting is that thou shalt not leave a letter unfinished. So we will soldier on, and although this first letter may take slightly longer than we would like, we will not have to worry about any dry edges or unsightly brush marks. By waiting until the letter has been completed before thinning the paint, we also garner some vital information about how the paint will react with the substrate. This will not be so much a lettering instructional video, as it will be a very basic introduction to how a signwriter can utilize and interact with a minimum and carefully chosen application of masking tape with regard to the hand lettering of a medium-size freestyle letter. As our regular viewers and subscribers will know, we generally try to avoid the use of masking tapes, mal sticks, pre-drawn templates, etc. in our videos. And whilst these are all very important tools of the trade and most definitely have their place in the signwriter's arsenal, they should never be completely dismissed as a cop-out or as some form of emotional crutch. But we here also believe that it can be somewhat detrimental to our overall skill as a professional signwriter to become too reliant on such auxiliaries. Using tape with signwriting is not as easy as it may seem, and there are many things which must be taken into consideration when doing so. The original intention for this video was to show various different ways in which masking tape can be utilized by the signwriter. For example, the coach lines on this cab were all done with the aid of bog-standard 1-inch masking tape. But unfortunately most of the footage was unusable, so we will have to make do with the wording on the front panel of this recovery truck, and how the process of signwriting the word recovery, in a bright red heavy Roman letter, arced at the bottom, with a close faux blended block shadow in imitation gold and olive drab, can be aided with a minimal use of such tape. There are many different types of masking tape, of varying quality, but basically any type of removable pressure-sensitive tape can be used with a little care. And generally speaking, the higher quality the tape, the less pressure or rubbing needs to be applied in order to produce a clean edge. The coated paper tape used in this video is specifically designed for signwriting and seems to be very good at its job. It ticks all the right boxes in that it has a lower profile than most of the plastic varieties. It is low tack. It is easily bent to conform to even the tightest curve. It is just as easily kept straight without deforming. It is easily removed. It doesn't leave any residual glue. And above all, as long as it is applied in the correct manner, it leaves a super clean low-profile edge. Vertical taping may have made the ends of these cross strokes easier to finish, but it would have required 3 separate pieces of tape at 3 different positions and with one of them at an angle, plus the possibility of having to horizontally reposition all 3. So the signwriting brain decided to overrule this option in favor of economy of motion. It is important to note that the excess paint that is left on the tape can give a false sense of proportion to your letters, which can result in some letters being either top or bottom heavy. So you also need to train yourself to subconsciously register the line where the light catches the paint-covered tape edge, thus ignoring the overspill. With smaller lettering, it may be sometimes easier to just run a continuous length of tape along the upper and lower levels, ignoring any round letters, which, as you all should know, will extend slightly above and below their respective lettering heights. But with a larger letter such as this, it is easy enough to split the tape before and after any such rounded or pointed letters, thus negating the need to add these extensions after the tape has been removed. So, these two round letters, C and O, can be lettered in a normal signwriting fashion, without the need for any post-tape refinements. And you will also notice that, similar to the previous letter E, this C could also benefit from a vertical strip of tape, to ease the finishing of its strokes to the right. It should go without saying that the job in hand should be thoroughly cleaned before laying so much as a chinograph on its surface. A rudimentary wipe with a dry cloth might be all well and good on a wooden signboard. But vehicle panels can be deceptive, and may hide any number of nasty surprises, the most dangerous being car wax or silicone overspray. It can be pretty soul-destroying to have spent the time laying out a job, when just as you put brush to substrate, your paint starts to react in a similar way to the fisheye defect more common in spray painting. It is therefore recommended to always wipe down with a compatible panel wipe. Even a freshly painted vehicle can often become contaminated by airborne silicone particles. This is where our old friend the roll of masking tape can come in handy. A quick way of telling if a surface needs degreasing is to simply try to stick the end of a roll of standard masking or painter's tape to the panel in question, and if there is any wax present, the roll of tape should fall to the ground under its own weight, thus letting you know that the panel will require a deep clean. When using tape at the top and bottom of your lettering, the same basic method for pulling a stroke applies as when tape is not used. Apart from relieving some mental pressure, all the tape really does is save you from having to deal with painting the corners. Obviously, this will go some way to saving time on the job, but beware. The painting of a sharp corner, whether it be acute, obtuse, or right-angled, can take years to perfect. So the over-reliance on this shortcut may just prove to be a false economy. It can be quite confusing to the eye when the lower lettering level is curved but the upper level is straight. For example, although this central cross-stroke must be kept horizontal and parallel with the upper one, your subconscious may also be registering with the lower arced cross-stroke, thus causing the temporary optical illusion of the central stroke running up towards the right. This is yet another of the multitude of things that you must train yourself to overcome on the road to becoming a professional signwriter. When approaching the bottom of a stroke, the brush pressure should be gradually lessened so that the tip barely touches the tape as it crosses it. Avoid scraping the flat surface of the bristles against the tape edge. The force of gravity will automatically make the freshly applied paint want to gather and pool against the upper edge of the bottom piece of tape. So extra care must be taken to prevent such a build-up by using a drier brush to pull the excess up and away from the tape. This is not so much of a problem when lettering without the aid of tape, due to the surface tension of the paint which allows for a smooth transition between letter and substrate, even at the bottom of a letter. When pulling a curved stroke such as the bowl of this R, always start off parallel with the tape and run the brush just slightly away from it until you can begin your curve. On no account be tempted to start the curve on the tape, or you will get an unwanted sharp transition between the straight and curved strokes. The same applies to the bottom left-hand side of the leg of the R where a slightly rounded corner is required. Reduce pressure on the brush whilst simultaneously twisting it to effectively avoid the tape by running parallel to its upper edge. Do not try to run the stroke directly into it. With the right-hand side of the leg, however, just like the other bottom serifs, as long as we approach it with a lighter pressure, we can indeed run the brush into the tape. An uppercase Y can be awkward enough at the best of times, but the bottom arc, as mentioned earlier, can add to the difficulties by making the letter look somewhat distorted. Couple this with the non-perpendicular edge of the panel, plus the previous few hours of 100% concentration required to letter and line the rest of the truck. The mind can really start to play tricks with the eyes. Not only can this Y appear distorted, but the angled panel edge can cause the letter to appear as if it is lying back on itself. Even the removal of the used tape can be fraught with danger, and this seemingly simple process must be approached with the utmost respect. There are many things that can go wrong at this stage, with the worst being the substrate's paint pulling off. Generally speaking, the tape should be removed slowly and smoothly. If pulled off too quickly, it can cause spidering outside the letter, which can be a nightmare to clean up. Or the tape could break, snapping back against the job and plastering your beautiful work with unwanted smudges. So please be careful. So with the lettering having been completed in approximately 20 minutes, that is all for this episode, but we hope that you will join us for the second and final part, when we will be adding a 2-color close shadow with faux blending. Farewell, brushketeers.